Well, hello, ALBW, wherever you are. Long time no see. And I want to say hello to everybody who's with us here today in the studio, or not in the studio, but out there looking at us and filling in the comment section. And also want to say hello to all of you who may join later on by catching up on YouTube. So we always like to see how many people show up for that as well. So always exciting. I'm Pat Escate. I am the lead organizer of ALBW and your host today on ALBW Live. And I am really excited about this particular interview with Lynn Pharaoh. When I picked up Lynn's book, I did not know what to expect. We certainly know a lot about young Miss Lister or Miss Lister in her romantic period via Helena Whitbread and her business period via Jill Liddington. And so it's a real pleasure to see something in book form that covers that whole younger part of Anne's life. So without any further ado, let's say hello to Lynn Pharaoh.
Hi, Pat.
Hey, Lynn, how are you?
Yeah, doing fine, thank you. You okay?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm delighted to be talking to you about this book today. I was so impressed by it, and I seriously mean that, folks. It's if you are a true Anne Lister scholar, you need to pick this book up. So there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth. Before we get started, Lynn, a little bit about you. You've published 2 books on Anne Lister. The first one was Anne Lister, Anne Walker, and Me. Am I right about that? What was the?
That's right.
Sorry,
yeah.
I meant to have it down here. It's up in the bookshelf. And now, of course, Young Miss Lister. But before you did that, and there's the cover for Young Miss Lister. But before you did that, you have a couple of other books published in a field that probably not a lot of our Lister sisters are really connected to, and that is?
Well, it's physics and science, and some people get excited when they hear that, and some people switch off.
Oh, my wife is downstairs clapping right now, the engineer. So that's, you know.
Oh, good for her. Good for her. Right. Well, I was a physics teacher to 11 to 18-year-olds for 35 years.
Oh my gosh.
And during that time, I wrote a lot of resources and for my students, and I always had a kind of conversational, talking to them directly style in the way I wrote. And
Nice.
And then when I retired, I was contacted by HarperCollins, who wanted me to write physics book for them, and I have quite a number. And as far as they would let me, I tried to have the similar sort of conversational style, as far as editorial control would let me. But when I decided to start writing about Anne Lister with the first book, as you've mentioned, Anne Lister, Anne Walker, and Me, I thought I'd best to stick with what I knew. So I wrote the books in a conversational style where I'm talking directly to the reader.
Very nice.
So and I've carried on with that basically with Young Miss Lister, because I just think stick with what I knew.
Well, and
of course.
It certainly comes off, and it makes the book extremely easy to read. I have a question for you, though. With your background in science, did that have any effect on how you viewed Anne Lister in your research? Because she was also a person with a great scientific mind. Did it help in any way, or was it just a coincidence?
Well, I think it gave me an affinity, shall we say, with Anne Lister. I knew where she was coming from with regard to her interest in. I mean, Anne Lister was interested in absolutely everything, and but she was particularly interested in science and maths and such like. Yeah. So yes, I definitely felt an affinity in that regard. And,
so what made you decide to take on this new project? You had the one book already done. So how did this one happen?
Do you know, I think it was just mainly curiosity. I wanted to know more about those early years that Anne was developing, and ultimately, obviously, became the brilliant, remarkable woman that we know.
Indeed.
And are inspired by. I wanted to see a bit about how her relationships with Eliza Reign, Isabella Norcliffe, and Marianne, how they came about, what happened there. So mainly, I suppose, a bit of curiosity, A few, maybe looking to bust a few myths if need be.
And we're going to
But
talk about
also,
that.
I had such fun writing Anne Lister and Walker and Me. I thought I could do that again, purely for my own pleasure.
Fantastic. Really wonderful. So I want to talk about, and by the way, I certainly don't mean to rush you, but we have so much to cover today. And by the way, for the audience that's out there, we are going to do an ALBW update at the end of this. So do stick around after the Q&A. So let's now talk about how you actually did this, because we know that her bound diaries, she didn't start with the bound diaries until later in life. And the very first loose paper bit, which is, of course, the Eliza Left Us document, was written in August of 1806. And then there's this huge stretch in her late teens, mid-20s, with no journals that have been found anyways. And she didn't start using those large bound diaries journals until 1817. So where did you find all of the information?
Almost exclusively in letters in the Shibden estate boxes and at the archives in Halifax.
Nice.
There are a lot of letters in there. A lot of the letters are to the listers rather than from the listers, not exclusively, because the listers, they were very keen on hanging on to letters and such like, fortunately for me. So there are a lot of letters in there. And my wife and I went down to the archives we had 3 visits, and I took about 1,200 photographs.
Wow.
So I have got a massive collection of photographs of the letters and also other documents, for example, Eliza Rain's journal. The letters there are beautifully written letters by Anne and I think by her brother. And let me tell you, not all the letters are as beautifully written as that and as easy to read either.
Interesting.
But
Jen,
and some of them are crossed.
Jen, can you? Yeah, let's. Here's 2 of those letters back. And you made a comment to me when you and I first started talking about this interview that you found Anne's handwriting to be quite beautiful in her early letters. Is that not true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the quality of the handwriting was a big deal in terms of all the children's education. It was an important part to be able to write beautifully.
Very interesting.
Obviously, in Anne's journal, she abbreviates words, and so that's a bit of a knack to read. But certainly, the letters, her actual letters, and some of the letters are her draft letters as well.
Wow.
And in some cases, it's just the draft letters because she liked to write the letter out first, so she didn't make any mistakes in the final copy. She was very proud of her letter writing.
Yes.
So, but some of the letters were crossed, which makes it a bit difficult to read. But it was
We're
wonderful.
See some of those in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really, it was very enjoyable just trying to decipher them, to be honest.
So much of that sounds like fun, and then it starts to feel like, oh my God, I could never follow all that stuff. But wow, let me start getting us into line here. As you did your work, did any of your findings change or challenge any previous opinion that you had about Anne or anybody else for that matter?
Well, what I did once I first watched Gentleman Jack was try to get lots of books to read, which I did.
Yes.
And some of them were positive about Anne Lister, and some of them were negative about Anne Lister.
Yes.
So you don't know. But it was, what I did notice was that anybody she befriended wanted to stay friends with her.
Interesting.
With possibly one exception. But even with the women that she was involved intimately with, and even when that relationship was over, they still wanted to be friends with Anne Lister. And that made me think, well, she had to be very charismatic. And she'd have to be very nice as well. Yes. People aren't going to stay friends with somebody who isn't nice.
Right.
So I think from my original reading of books and such like, maybe I began to realize that she was actually a very nice person.
Interesting. And you mentioned to me as we were talking that that you, and we'll talk about these later, so I don't want to go there right now, but you did talk about the fact that you feel there have been some misconceptions about her that getting into this book could help. So stick around for those, folks, because it's interesting. But why did you think it was important to challenge those this mischaracterizations, the misconceptions?
Well, I'm a scientist. I need to know the truth. Basically, I wanted to know what was really the case, what was really going on, and I wanted to find out stuff from primary sources. I wanted it to be what I read in the journals. I wanted it to be looking at letters that I'd read. I didn't want to have my opinion affected by anybody else's opinion. I just wanted to get to the truth and use primary sources and hard evidence, which is,
I love that,
probably coming from my scientific background.
I love that. So let's start moving into some of your specific findings. We do not know for certain where Anne was born. There's been all sorts of conjecture about maybe it was Northgate, blah, blah, blah. Helena had a specific thought about it, and we have a couple of pictures here. We're going to show a couple of pictures of St. Helens and also of its connection to Ellenroyd, which many of you know about. I want to thank both Helena Whitbread for this information and Jason Ward. And if you don't follow Jason Ward in Calderdale Then and Now on Facebook, you really should. He is a brilliant collector of photographs of Halifax from the old times, and it just fills in so much of what we know about her. So on the left side here with the blue circle, we have a house known as St. Helens, and that's actually in that area you see circled in orange on the right-hand side. So when they built that little highway spur there, that whole neighborhood went away. And then up on the top is Ellenroyd. And Ellenroyd is the house that many of you have done on tours with David Glover, et cetera. And we're going to show you those in a second. But right now, we're going to talk a little bit about the many moves that the listers made. And one of the first times that they moved was to Market Wheaton, right?
It was to a couple of miles outside of Market Wheaton. Mm-hmm. And they lived in a property that was built in the late 1700s. And there you can see that is the house that Anne spent most of her childhood in, from age 2 to about age 13. I can tell you, to be perfectly honest, it does now have UPVC windows.
Oh, and well, there you go.
A friend of mine very cleverly removed them from the photograph for me, so that actually looks like how it looked for Anne's youth. And she was there till she was 13, something like that. So
interesting.
It is a farm. It is a farm basically, and her parents were trying to run it as a farm. And
her mother. I read while I was doing my research for this. I read that Anne's mother is the person who actually inherited, and it was a very large piece of property. It was one of the larger pieces of property in the area. So that was mostly due to Rebecca that they had it in the first place, right? They sort of tried to make a go of it.
Yeah, that's correct. They only built 3 farms on it. So I'm not sure whether the estate was as big when she inherited it as when it was first recorded. But Lynn, yes, so they lived there, and then sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say they moved from Skelfler House into a rented property in Market Wheaton, and in 1804. And the reason they did that was because Anne's dad was working away with the militia, and there's no way Anne's mother, Rebecca, could run the farm on her own.
Right.
So they let somebody else run the farm, and they moved into rented accommodation in Market Wheaton.
Right.
And
Now,
I have a theory about that, which people might be interested in, and that is there is a famous quote that Anne wrote in her journal where she talks about going out at night secretly and wandering around the town, seeing all sorts of things going on, included, in her words, bad women.
bad women.
And nobody knew she was up to doing that. Yeah. Now, I proposed the theory that that was when she was living in Market Wheaton. It was Market Wheaton where she was seeing all this going on, not Halifax. And the reason I think that is because in her quote, she refers to it being when her dad was away with the militia. And that's when they were living in rented accommodation in Market Wheaton.
Oh, brilliant. So, that's wonderful. So they moved from that rental property to a property called King's, or in the area of King's Cross of Halifax.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, in about 1806. Yes, when Anne was about 15, and they were there for a couple of years, and then they moved again, and they moved in, right. I think, into Ellenroyd on Haley Hill, the north side of the bridge in Halifax.
Now, I think, if you can hold on just 1 second, I specifically wanted to use this image, which again comes from Jason Ward, a fabulous image of the house that most of you have visited. But it starts to give you a sense of how far out of town it actually was. And the sort of the local neighborhood. These buildings obviously were built back, I think, in the 60s or 70s, maybe. But you can see Ellenroyd there in the middle. Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
Well, Ellenroyd is still probably closer to the centre of Halifax than King Cross. So it did mean that they could socialise better. You know, it was easier for people to come in or just walk to them. So there's the whole family's sort of socialising improved when they moved to Ellenroyd.
Interesting.
And then 2 years later, in 1810, they moved into St. Helen's House, which is the place that you mentioned before. And I personally think, well, when they moved into St. Helen's House, Eliza Rain, Anne's school friend, was writing her journal. And you would have thought that she would have mentioned that Anne was born in St. Helen's House, if that was the case. That's what I'm thinking, because she was living in Halifax at the time that they made that move. So I would think it's likely that she would have mentioned it. So maybe other people have more information than I have than that. But based on what information I've seen, given that Anne's father was away with the militia when Anne's mother, Rebecca, was heavily pregnant with Anne, I think it is highly likely that she was born at Northgate House, the home of her Uncle Joseph and Aunt Elizabeth, because I can't picture Rebecca, heavily pregnant, living on her own.
I think that's a very interesting supposition. I think there's a lot of meat on that bone, quite frankly. Now, at age 12, though, in 1803, so it's sort of in between all this time, what happens to Anne at age 12?
Well, she does spend about 10 months at Shibden Hall.
Okay.
And there is basically what Shibden Hall looked like when she was a girl. So no tower there. Essentially the outline there of the chimneys and the windows and such is what it looked like when Anne was younger. My sister painted that for me based on other images of Shibden.
Very nice.
And then, of course, she went to the Manor School in York, and that's where she met Eliza Rain.
Exactly right.
Yeah. and there it is, and that's a beautiful old building.
Yeah.
And so yes, the manor school there. I've never got inside it. That's the only thing. Been there, but
Right.
never managed to get inside.
So, given where we know that they lived during that time, Eliza's early visits to Halifax were likely to the houses in King's Cross and Ellenroyd. Yes, you think?
Yes, she was definitely there for the summer of 1806 in King's Cross, and she was definitely there in the summer of 1808.
Okay.
But in a letter I read of Sam to Anne's brother, I got the impression that he'd already met Eliza Rain before the 1806 visit.
Okay.
So I obviously I could do with more evidence to back it up, but I think it's quite possible that Eliza Rain visited the Listers when they were in a rented property in Market Wheaton.
Oh,
I
wow.
think that's quite possible. And it's quite interesting that Eliza had spent 3 summers with the Listers before Anne actually went to York to spend time with Eliza at her home in York.
Wow. And in York, of course, she's living with the Duffins, right?
Yes, the Duffins, Mr. William Duffin and Elizabeth Duffin were her guardians. She
Right.
was an orphan, and they've been her guardian since she was about 6 or 7 years old. And also living with them was Eliza's older sister Jane. She was a couple of years older, and they lived with the Duffins on Micklegate in York. And the Duffins treated them like their own children. They didn't have children of their own, but they absolutely treated them like their own children.
So, for those of you who don't know this bit of information about Eliza Rain, the reason she was living with the Duffins is Mr. Duffin had also served with Eliza's father, and in India, correct?
India Company. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So her father asked that he take care of his 2 daughters, and that's how she wound up in York. So, so let's talk a little bit more about her relationship with the Duffins. She talks about them in her journal, if we want to throw that up there.
Yes, she's very close to them, and the Duffins are. I think Mr. Duffin is kind of retired, and him and his wife spend about 5 or 6 months of the year in a property called the Red House.
Okay.
And that is near Nuneaton. It's about 11 miles outside of York. I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful building. I've not been inside that actual bit simply because that's a family home. But if you look to the right, can you see a small building at the right? Well, that's actually a chapel that was also built in the 1600s.
Oh, wow.
And just next to that, and it's wonderful to go in that chapel, there's an organ in it that looks to me like it could be the original one.
Oh,
but just next to it, at the back of the house, is a part of the property they've converted into a holiday let. And me and my wife stayed there a few years ago.
Oh, nice.
And, it's a big estate. It's wonderful.
It really is. It really is interesting because we first learn about all of Anne and Eliza's friends because they live in York, and we certainly have pictures of their houses in York. And in fact, you're going to see one a little later on in here. It's kind of like they have these pied-à-terres in the city, like New Yorkers do, and then they have these gigantic estates outside of town.
That's very common. It was very common, if you could afford it, to leave the city in the summer.
Yeah.
And I just imagine maybe in years gone by, when there was plague around, it was most likely it would attack in the summer. So anybody with money tended to leave the city in the summer and return sort of autumn time. Anne did spend some time at the Red House. That she did actually spend a bit of time there.
Oh, she did.
I knew about the Red House from Anne's letters, but I didn't know where it was. until I came across Eliza Reigns' journal.
Oh,
Because if
wow.
you Google the Red House,
Yeah.
there's thousands of them.
Oh,
And
my
I thought,
God.
well, where could it be? But I was just so glad when I actually had taken photographs of Eliza's journal and I came across the exact location of it. So that's when I wanted to go and stay there.
Good on you. Nice discovery. So now, while we're hearing about Eliza and her journal at this point, we also hear about a number of things that are going on with Eliza. There's Miss Marsh, Eliza's health problems, thinning hair. And so, of course, she and Anne don't really see each other between 1806 and 1808. So
No,
yeah, right?
I think what I've realized is that most of the people involved in Anne's life, and so generally speaking, people, even though they were probably eating and drinking much healthier foods than a lot of people, their health was always an issue. There was always something. Nobody was ever particularly well for any length of time. It's a bit like
speaking of which, yeah.
excuse me. It's there's always something. It's a severe headache, or it's a hair thinning, or it's a cough, and that was always the scary one, having the cough because of the potential of having tuberculosis. So none of them were ever that well for any extended periods of time.
But it did leave you.
Maybe they're still young and they're still developing an immune system. Maybe that was why. But yes, Eliza had periods of being very unwell and other periods where she was fine.
And so they did write a lot to each other during that period of time, which was good for you because that's where your research comes from. In that period of time also, it feels as if Eliza formed a pretty good relationship with Anne's mother, Rebecca.
She did. I think that was formed particularly when Eliza was visiting the Listers. And she did become close to Rebecca. I think, in fact, she actually looked upon Rebecca as a mother.
Yeah.
But whilst Rebecca was very fond of Eliza, I don't think the relationship was balanced. I don't think Rebecca was as attached to Eliza as Eliza was to Rebecca. Right. Both of them suffered from mental health problems. And I think that was a bond that brought them together.
Wow. So, and the letters between the two of them offered you some interesting insights because they would write about, she would mention Anne, right? Each one of them, there was some conversation going on about Anne in those letters, correct or incorrect?
I think the only real thing they mentioned about Anne was that they wouldn't tell Anne quite how badly they were feeling because she might make them go out for a walk and things like this. There was that. There wasn't much mention of her, to be fair. Right. What was interesting is that the letters in the archives were from Eliza to Rebecca, mostly. In fact, may even be exclusively. So you had to work out what Rebecca must have replied to Eliza from the next letter that Eliza wrote to Rebecca. If you see what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that was the case with quite some of the letters between Eliza and Anne. I had to work out what Anne must have said to get the next response from Eliza, which is like detective work, which is really good fun.
Yeah, it's a great jigsaw puzzle you're working on, which I think is fabulous.
Yeah.
So, so during this period of time, Anne manages to have a pretty busy social life between 1806 and 1807, didn't she? Especially with one particular person.
She did. When Anne was about 16, she became friends with a woman called Maria Alexander. And Maria lived with her family at Hopwood Hall, which I think you may even have a picture of. And the Alexanders were quite a big family. they didn't all live at the house, but even the ones that had moved into other houses were frequently at this house. It was a bit of a hive of activity. And at age 16, was a lot younger than the people there. If I tell you that it's likely that Maria was about 31.
Oh, wow.
So it's not like teenagers being friends.
Right.
You see, so it's, there was mention of a bit of horseplay with Eliza and Anne and Maria ended up sat on Eliza's knee and at Eliza's instigation and kissed Maria. I think it was just a lot of frolicking and horseplay and having a bit of a laugh. And there was the occasional bit of frolicking, for want of a better word, between Eliza and Maria. But I don't think there was any.
Anne and Maria, right?
Anne and Maria. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah. Anne and Maria.
Yeah, that would have been.
I don't think there was an involvement. I just think it was a bit of fun because Anne was only 16 at the time.
Well, she did stay over a few nights, right?
She stayed over a few nights, and on some occasions there were some goings on. It has to be said, but I wouldn't say it involvement really, because Anne went to the Alexander's home, Hopwood Hall, on many occasions when Maria wasn't even there. Maria went to London. Maria went to stay with friends. She became friends with all of the Alexanders and played cards with them.
I was going to say,
some of them are in their 30s.
Yes, I was going to say she actually did pretty good at cards against them.
Yeah, she must have been very good company for them to have a 16-year-old with them when they're all getting on a bit.
Now, by the way, when I was first introduced to the subject of Maria Alexander, the person who told me about Anne visiting her said that she was teaching Maria how to play the flute. But that's not the case, right?
No.
Piano?
She was teaching her to play the piano. It was later than that Anne took up the flute and started to teach herself playing the flute. She was teaching Maria to play the piano because that is something Anne was very good at. She even played in the church at Market Wheaton when she was just 11 years old. She played on the organ. And she was very good at very good at keyboards. And she did go on a few occasions to teach Maria. I don't think Maria was actually that committed to learning to play the piano, but there was one occasion when the guy whose name I've forgotten, who played the organ at the Minster, had turned up at the house to tune it. And he was obviously tuning a piano because they wouldn't have got the guy from the Minster to come and tune a flute, would they?
No, exactly.
So that was conclusive evidence for me, anyway.
Yeah. So meanwhile, we're still here in 1808. There's an interesting thing that you found in Anne's records, a certain word that she started to place into her journal. And that's image 14.
This was when Anne was 17. Well, both Anne and Eliza were 17. And Anne's using a word as code. And the word is Felix. And that word represents Anne and Eliza having some kind of sexual intimacy. So that's the very start of Anne keeping a record of her sex life, which she always did from then on.
And using something with an X in it. That's what I found particularly interesting. She just kind of brought it down to X rather than Felix. Now, we see Anne's last journal entries for the next 6 years in what year?
That would be 1810.
Okay, so between 1810 and when we pick it up again,
1816.
1816, you find that you've discovered a whole number of things that come in from the letters that you found. In one case, 1810 to 1811, you've discovered that Anne's health deteriorated quite a bit, right?
Yes. Yes, indeed. It was about the family moved into St. Helens House in what was it, 1810, August, and in September Anne started with scarlet fever, which is a bad enough illness, but she did recover from it, seemingly. And then about 6 weeks later, in a letter to Isabella Norcliffe, she's complaining that she can't sleep, and she's not getting to sleep until 3 or 4 in the morning.
Sorry.
And then... Okay.
My
bad. No worries, no worries. And so about about 6 weeks later, she's clearly still unwell. And then on Christmas Eve, she's writing a letter to Isabella Norcliffe. And I was reading this letter and I thought, is she drunk? Because it was absolute nonsense.
Oh, wow.
It was very odd. And I remember telling a group of Lister sister friends about this, that I'd read this letter, and I thought, is she the worst for drink? It's Christmas Eve. Has she been having a good time? She's had too much to drink. But Anne isn't like that. Anne does not drink to excess. So the only other thing I could think of was that she had a high temperature, because that could make you delirious, can't it? So the next day she carried on the letter, and she's actually writing that she's spent the first half of the letter writing absolute nonsense the night before.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I thought, is this continuing health problem as a result of the scarlet fever that she had?
Wow.
And it is, and so I did a little bit of research, and it is not uncommon for an illness like scarlet fever, if you don't treat it with antibiotics, and of course they didn't have the antibiotics, you can develop a major complication. And one of those major complications is rheumatic fever. And one of the symptoms is a very high temperature. Oh, wow. So I wondered, maybe she was really unwell. But then there's no letters in the archives for the next couple of months until the one that you just showed, which was a draft letter. And it's written, I'm only guessing, but I'm fairly confident, by her Uncle James.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Her Uncle James is writing a letter to Mr. Duffin and telling him how ill Anne is and how they've had doctors to see her, and they think it might be her starting to develop tuberculosis. They think it could be to do with her liver or other things. They've had leeches on her. They've had the blisters on her to try to get her better. She's not getting any better. She's getting worse. Wow. And the reason they've written to Mr. Duffin is because him being a surgeon in the East India Company meant that he wasn't just a surgeon. He had, as a member of the East India Company, his job was to be treating ailments and illnesses. And he was a very knowledgeable medical man, even though he didn't have the title doctor. Okay. And so they wrote to him, and he's told them, fetch her here. And the listers took her to Mr. Duffin's on Micklegate, and he took care of her and treated her with all sorts of different things. And it took 5 months to get her right. Wow. So and Anne herself wrote on a letter, not at the time, later on a letter, reference was made to this, that she'd had a very severe illness. Wow. So yes, she was in a bad way.
Wow. So that's a really interesting little thing that you dug up there. Now, because we need to keep moving, you've also commented on the closeness between Anne and her brother Sam, which we're very familiar with at this point, but I do want to show this letter before we jump to Isabella Norcliffe. So this is one of the letters between Anne and Sam, correct?
Yes, yes. And if just reading those letters, you will see how incredibly devoted they are to each other. They absolutely think the world of each other. This is Sam, which is her younger brother that's just a year or so younger than her. Yeah. And, while we're on that subject, though, I would like to add that I think all four siblings, Anne, Samuel, John, and Marion, were all very close. Marion even wrote that she looked upon Anne as a parent.
Wow.
And when John died in 1810, Anne and Samuel sat up with him night after night after night just to be there for him.
Wow.
And when he died, Anne was stricken with chest pains, and that went on for a month, so much so that she was actually frightened. And that's obviously caused by the bereavement. So
You know,
I think, and the siblings were very close.
one of the things that I'd like to point out with this, that Lynn and I spent hours talking about this prior, and I just want to make sure we get some of this out. That one of the things that the letters led you to understand far more fully than we get from other depictions of Anne is what a caring person she was.
Yes.
Both with her family and her friends. That this whole kind of the misconception that she's kind of this evil, person in her own way, it couldn't be farther from the truth, in your opinion, from what you've read, at least in her younger years.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did we're going to move into Isabella Norcliffe. How did that friendship with Isabella Norcliffe come about?
Well, Anne was actually staying at Micklegate with the Duffins with Eliza. She'd gone and had a visit, and sadly, for some reason which I don't know, Eliza had a big row with the Duffins and basically stormed out, saying she was never coming back ever, basically. And off she went to Doncaster to live with her cousin, leaving Anne behind. And so, I mean, they had been having a brilliant time. They really were enjoying themselves. So Anne would have been absolutely bereft the fact that Eliza went. Mr. Duffin said to Anne, "You can stay. There's no need for you to head back to Halifax yet. You can stay." And it was during that period when she was there without Eliza that she befriended Isabella Norcliffe.
Do you know how they first met?
I don't know exactly how they first met. I mean, it's quite possible that the Norcliffes and the Duffins may have had some connection. I don't know, but she met her, and they became friends. And I think in the summer the Norcliffes head off. They do the same thing. They head off to their estate that's out of the city.
Jen, hold on just 1 sec. Jen, could you put that picture up of High Petergate, please? Yeah. So that's
I don't know which house is which, but the Norcliffes had one property, and another family called the Belcombes had another property. And then in the Belcombes, there was a number of young women, all sisters, and one of them was Mariana Belcombe, and she was friends with Isabella. And I do actually think it's highly likely that Anne first met Mariana Belcombe on that visit, albeit fleetingly, and that was in 1810.
Oh, wow. She was much
younger.
I mean,
Anne did manage to get Eliza and the Duffins back together. She managed, and it's a long story, there's a lot goes on, but she managed to get the Duffins and Eliza back together. But Anne and Eliza kind of split up at that point. It was they weren't together as a couple, and and subsequently Eliza moved to Halifax in order to have some education at a school in Halifax.
Right.
So
was that with the Mrs. Milnes, or where was she going to school?
It was the Mellon sisters had a school in Halifax. Right. It's a long story why she didn't stay in York, but she needed to go somewhere, and obviously she was very close to the Listers in Halifax, and Anne had introduced Eliza to lots and lots of people in Halifax, so she was always going to have a good social life there.
So in the meantime, now that Anne has met the Norcliffes, she takes a trip out to Langton Hall to their country estate, and we have a picture of that.
Yeah, that's a couple of years later when Anne actually goes to Langton Hall. This is the estate of the Northcliffes. It's a couple of years later, partly because the Northcliffes only inherited the Langton estate in 1807, and it needed a lot of work doing on it to make it habitable. It needed a lot of work. So Anne didn't actually get to Langton Hall until about 1812, and yeah,
But
so it was Anne that actually introduced Eliza to the Northcliffes and subsequently to the Belcombes as well.
Right. And so I have a note in here from our conversation that she meets Mariana at Langton Hall, or she had met her.
I think she's already met her a couple of years earlier, but Mariana Belcombe is at Langton Hall.
Okay.
But Anne is still very much with Isabella at this point. It's it's not till 2 years after the visit to Langton Hall that Anne and Mariana get together.
And she and Isabella had a very close relationship, right, during that period of time?
They did, but a lot of it was by letter. You see, a lot of it was by letter. These relationships are long distance relationships, right, and are supported by letter writing in between times. So yes, this is Langton Hall, and the painting on the left is a painting done by Isabella Northcliffe's sister's daughter, and
Mary Ellen Best.
I took when me and my wife stayed at Langton Hall. Although we didn't stay in the hall bit, we were relegated to the servants' quarters, which incidentally were exceptionally comfortable.
As one did. So now she also visits Bath with the Northcliffes as well, right? You have some letters back and forth on that.
In I think it was February of 1813. So Anne would be about 22 at the time, and the Northcliffes were very keen for Anne to go with them. And the picture on the left is of Laura Place, number 1, which is where the Northcliffes stayed. When me and my wife were visiting a relative who lives near Bath, we took a visit to Bath and we tracked down that property. Couldn't go in it, of course, but and there's no actual extended journal at this time, but there is a single sheet of paper which you can see on the right there, and that is Anne talking about Bath. But there's a little quote at the bottom which, if you don't mind, I will just read it to you.
Sure, please.
Because to cut a long story short, at this time Eliza is actually living at a place called Clifton Hotwells, which is about 15 miles northwest of Bath. She's primarily there for her health. And Eliza and Isabella and Anne go to visit her. And she goes and visits them at Laura Place. But when she goes to visit them, I've got this quote from Anne. Got a good dinner from Eliza. Isabella in a fury before tea. Came round again, pro forma, before supper. And that's just an indicator that of Isabella Northcliffe was apt to furious temper tantrums.
Oh, right. Yes, we've heard that about her.
And apparently Anne had a calming effect on her. Yeah. And that's why the Northcliffes were so keen for Anne to go with them, to keep Isabella under some degree of control.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Yeah, these Anne's relationships are not simple.
Yes, and that's I really want to get to this point, even though there's a couple of other things. But one of the points that you made to me and that you found in your book is that, again, the misconceptions about how Anne interacted with people and whether or not she was kind to Eliza, or so much of the conversation that goes on about that. You didn't wind up with an opinion that she was unkind with Eliza. Is that correct?
Oh, she was so good to Eliza. I don't understand where that opinion could come from. I really don't. She was so good. She was so patient. And Eliza was really quite demanding. And, there is a quote where well, a bit in Eliza's journal, where when Anne had scarlet fever, Anne was confined to bed. Eliza was feeling unwell and sent a message demanding Anne go to her, and Anne did.
Oh my God. Wow.
Eliza took some medicine. She had an upset tummy and she was right as rain the next day. But it meant that Anne was then confined to bed for a lot longer. The doctor was very cross that she needed to have bed rest and such like. But she was very good to Eliza. She was very kind. She was very supportive. She got her out of so many scrapes. And she introduced her to a lot of people. Now, Eliza wasn't one for making friends and being terribly sociable. She loved being sociable once the friends were made.
Yes.
And Anne introduced her to everybody she knew in Halifax, so that she had always had a good social life there. She introduced her to the Northcliffes and the Belcombes in York, and they were so good to Eliza as well. So I honestly don't know where it ever could have come from, the idea that she wasn't good to Eliza, because Eliza was at one point no longer wanted an intimate relationship with Anne. She was developing an interest in men, which I don't think for 1 minute she was a lesbian. So, it was the thing with Eliza, that anybody that Anne spent time with, Eliza was jealous of. But that didn't mean she didn't like that person. She adored Isabella Northcliffe. Eliza adored Isabella Northcliffe.
Right.
And so, and the idea that's been suggested that Anne flitted from one woman to another is completely incorrect. It was, she would have, when she met Isabella Northcliffe, it was going to be another year before they got together. And Eliza and Anne had already sort of split up, as in just being friends.
That's it.
And then 3 or 4 years later before she gets together with Mariana. So it's not this flitting around that some people have suggested at all.
So that's a great place for us to close this part of the interview, which is with a shot of Hall End, which was the scene of Anne and Mariana's Summer of Love, as you called it, correct?
Yes. Well, 1815, Anne was able to invite Mariana Belcombe to Shibden, and they had a wonderful time, and Anne absolutely loved it. And this house was where a friend of Anne, a girl called Mary Priestley, invited Anne and Mariana to come and stay, and she stayed there a few nights. And I have been inside there. There was an event held there, and I was invited to it, so I have been inside it.
Yeah. And
I always get a buzz when I go into any place that Anne has been to, and I felt it there very strongly, I have to say.
Yeah.
What I can say is that Anne described her summer of love, and I can just give you a quote. This is what Anne said: "I fondly thought that my love and happiness would last forever." And that was while Mariana was with her at Shibden Hall and at Hall End House.
Sad stories.
Well, ultimately, yes.
Yeah, but not at that exact moment in time.
Not at that exact moment.
So it's really amazing, everything that you've put together and what we've had to discuss today. I want to see if there's any questions. Cheryl is saying that she hasn't seen any yet. So I think we're good on that end, unless anybody wants to type one in right now, because it's going to be your last chance before we switch over to what's happening with ALBW. And you have covered this so thoroughly that we don't have any questions. But I want to tell all of you that there is so much more in this book. And that's one of the interesting things about trying to have an interview at the same time, because it's just been phenomenal. She's covered so much, and it will definitely open up your eyes on the younger Anne Lister. So I really want to thank you for that. And now you're seeing.
Can I just remind people that the book, both of my books, are available on Amazon.
Yes. And please pick it up, support your writers, Here it is right there. I've got my own copy, and I will tell you, this is exactly why I keep saying there's so much in here. I want you to see, you see all these pages and notes that are up. I have it in the wrong place. There we go. You can see every place that I've marked as far as new information about Anne and certainly Eliza. So please pick that book up. And Lynn, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, and it's been a pleasure talking to you over the last few weeks as we've worked out all of this. So I'm going to send you backstage for now, because we are going to move on to talking about ALBW 26. So wasn't that great? I really enjoyed that. So let's talk about a few things that are going on. There's one thing I want to talk about prior to getting to ALBW, and that is In Search of Ann Walker is starting their yearly fundraiser for the annual fundraising appeal that takes care of the poor and the hungry in Lightcliff. They're raising money for the Brigg House Central Food Bank in Ann Walker's name. And they do that because when Ann Walker died, she left a bequest in her will of £10 a year to the people of, I want to make sure I get this right, to feed those in need at Christmas. And of course, £10 back then was a huge sum of money. So, God bless Diane Halford and all the rest of In Search of Ann Walker and the people that they do every year to raise money. They've raised over £11,000 in their efforts, which feeds a lot of people. So now let's talk a little bit about, sorry. If you'd like to donate, the link is going to be on ALBW chat. So please feel free to pop in there and, leave a pound or two would be fantastic. Now, ALBW is, as you've seen on all of our graphics, is April 2 through 6. It actually goes through 2 through 5. That runs concurrently with with Calderdale's ALF Festival, which this year is running from March 30th to April 6th. Now, I honestly can't tell you much about that because I don't know anything about it. I don't know what they're planning. I know that the team is working hard at creating events, and you'll be hearing about those soon. I believe Rachel told me that their goal was to get tickets up and online in January for sale. But I'm sure Rachel will be starting to post more about what they have coming in. And in the meantime, I'm going to tell you about what we've got going on during ALBW. And one of the events I do want to point out, because I don't know, I'm assuming this is going to be in the ALF Festival, but I've just heard about it from Lynn and Phil. For those of you who did not make it into Cliff Hill a couple of years ago, when we had the ability to get inside and see the inside of Cliff Hill, Ian Philp has managed to get the kind owners once again to open up those 2 front rooms. So you will see tickets go on sale for that at some point regarding ALF or not. So please stay tuned for that, because it's a wonderful time to see the inside of Cliff Hill, which doesn't happen very often. You'll get to see the drawing room where Anne and Anne would meet with Aunt Anne, and sometimes Aunt Anne and Aunt Anne would all be in that same room together. But in any case, they did that both in real life and, of course, during the filming. That's during season 2 when you see them going to visit Aunt Anne. That's in that drawing room at Cliff Hill. So stay tuned for those tickets. And well done, Ian, for doing that once again. ALF will this year once again be opening up a hub, the ALF Central Hub, and that will again be at Northgate. It's not going to be in the same space. They've been fortunate enough to get a bigger space that's sort of catty-cornered from it. When you walked up to get to the ALF Hub last year, you turn left, and at this point, I believe it's the room in the right. And they will be doing some of their programming in there, as they did last year. It'll also be a very convenient place for you to stop in and visit with friends, meet-up place, etc. But we do get a table there, and hopefully they'll give us a bigger one than last year. But that is where you need to go to pick up your lanyard and your badge. And for those of you who haven't seen these before, this is an integral part of ALBW. All of these pins and badges, etc., are things that are produced by others, a few of them by us, and they're great fun to trade and collect and all the rest of that good stuff. And also, that will also be the place that if you order your collector's pin, and here's a couple of them so far, these are cloisonne pins. Our ALBW pin for this year, which will look like this for the 5th annual ALBW, will be available for pickup there. Those pins will go up for sale prior to ALBW. And again, keep your eye on ALBW chat because we'll be announcing the wheres and wins of all of that. ALBW, us, Cheryl and I, Cheryl's out there. Hi, Cheryl. We will be hosting 4 things this year. First of all, we will be hosting the Ann Lister Society, which will happen on Friday and Saturday. This year, it's going to be, again, it will be at the Imperial Crown Hotel. This is owing to the fact that the Peace Hall, Square Chapel has closed. And we have no word about it opening again. And I just want to go on the record here by saying I think this is just one of the worst things that could happen to Halifax, because that, for an event organizer, it is the perfect space to do any number of things. It's comfortable for the guests. It has great technical facilities. It's in a beautiful space with eating facilities, et cetera. And I do hope that Halifax and Calderdale put some power behind trying to get this thing back opened up again, because it's good for the town. Now, so you'll have the Ann Lister Society at the Imperial Crown. I want you to know also that the Imperial Crown is offering a 10% discount on their hotel rooms for those of you that will be attending either the Ann Lister Society. By the way, here's the lanyard you get when you are speaking at the Ann Lister Society. That they will be offering rooms to people that are coming for ALS, and they're also offering rooms for people that are coming for ALBW, 10% discount. And that link will be on the ALBW chat page shortly. So look for that there. It's a nice location. It's right around the corner from Square Chapel and the Peace Hall, close to everything you want to get to, very close to the Minster, etc. So nice place to stay. Our annual reception for those of you who will be attending the Ann Lister Society is going to be on Saturday night this year, not Friday night. And well, Saturday evening, because it'll happen right after ALS ends their talks. And the reason that it's being held on Saturday rather, is that O'Hooley and Tito are going to be appearing at the Arches this year. Now, they have not released this information because they're actually on their one last time tour, but they decided that they wanted to come back to Halifax. It's a special place to them. And of course, celebrate Gentleman Jack and Ann Lister and Ann Walker with all of you that are such fans. So they will be throwing a concert on Saturday night at the Arches. We, on Friday night, will have 2 events also at the Arches. We will have our birthday bash there that evening. We are not doing dinner this time, even though we really had planned on it. And the reason we're not doing dinner is because there's no place else to put speakers. That's why I brought up the thing about Square Chapel. We're using the Arches for our dinner dance, but prior to that, starting probably around 6:30 in the evening, it will be the fabulous Sally Wainwright and I sitting down to talk about, yes, of course, Riot Women. And I'm not making any promises, but I have heard a rumor that there might be a Riot Woman or 2 that may show up for this. So I absolutely recommend that you buy tickets for this once we get them up on sale. It's going to be a wonderful evening. Sally is just over the moon about the response to this. As you all know, they have gotten season 2. And what you may or may not know, because it was just announced yesterday, that Riot Woman won Rolling Stone magazine's UK Game Changer Award yesterday for Riot Women. This is a big freaking deal. And I'm excited about it because I'm really hoping that BritBox puts a huge push on behind Riot Women when they release it in the United States on BritBox on January 21st, I believe it is. So very happy about that. Now, so that's that. Now, we also have a couple of things that are also happening during ALBW. These are events that have been created by members of the community. They're not ALBW events per se, but they're happening during ALBW, and it'll be a great place for you to meet and hang out together. The first of that is Friday, April 2nd, the ALBW 26 five-a-side football tournament. Okay, so for all of you football players and or Americans who play soccer, there is going to be a tournament there. It's 5-on-side. It's going to be held indoors at the Halifax Indoor Football Center. The arrangements have all been made. It's been set aside for us from 6:30 to 8:30. And even if you don't play football, it's going to be a great place to hang out and meet up with people before all of the rest of our festivities get started. So that's on April 2nd, Thursday night, and you don't want to miss that. And you'll see more about that. If you go to ALBW chat on Facebook, you'll see that there's a tab that's set aside for events. Click on that and you'll find the information about this event and the other event that's going on. And that is on Friday night, directly following the birthday bash. There is going to be the after bash birthday bash that will be held from 11:30 onwards at Barcode Halifax. And there are many of you who participated in that last year. You will probably never see Brenda and I at that because we're usually asleep by, 11. So on Halifax days. So anyway, those are the events that are happening. There will be more coming out as soon as we know anything about the ALF festival. We will certainly be sharing that with you. Do make your reservations for your hotels, etc. You now know that they're going to be starting on Monday of that week and running through the 6th. Now, the other thing, there's one other really important thing for you to know. It is Easter weekend in Halifax. This is important for you to know because both the library and the archives will be closed Good Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you're coming to Halifax for ALBW and ALF and you want to spend some time in the archives, make sure you get there before they close on Good Friday. And make sure to check online to see what their actual schedule is, because going to the archives is one of the best things about going to Halifax, and I don't want you to miss that. So there you have it. Now, I want to great thanks to Lynn Pharaoh. Fabulous job on the book once again. And as always, to Jen Van Gessel, my producer. And of course, we'll be hearing more about her movie Langton, I hope, sometime in the very near future, Jen. And because we'll see you all again before ALBW 26. Now, before I leave you, this is important. Years ago, a dear friend of mine who has since passed gave me a badge, and that badge said, "Don't postpone joy." It's a hallmark of my life. You never know when the opportunity to experience joy may not be there for you. ALBW was founded on the concept of joy. It is a fabulous experience to be in Halifax with your entire community. And I highly recommend that you try to make it this year. It's our 5th anniversary. All right. So without further ado, I thank you very much, and I'll see you in Halifax.